So on behalf of the Board of Trustees and the Board of Directors, again, thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for allowing us to give this tribute. For most of you in the room tonight, I know you have a special connection to hospice. And for me personally, my connection is to my grandmother, Mary Edith Thompson, who passed away 3.5 years ago. And unfortunately, I was not able to be by her side when she was passed. But hospice was, and along with my mother. And just knowing that she had that care, that extra care, helping her in her last moments really helped me, helped me in my struggle with her passing. So I know you all have your individual stories, and we'll really hear a lot of that tonight. So one of the reasons why we have Pikes Hospice Foundation is we provide this care for people like my grandmother, Mary Thompson, regardless of their ability to pay. So we appreciate your support of our foundation as well. And now I'd like to introduce our Pikes Hospice Foundation Executive Director, Laura Rosendo, who's going to share with you more about today's tribute and more about our tree of life. Laura?
Okay, well, thank you all for being here this evening. And for those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Laura Rosendo, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as Executive Director of the Pikes Hospice Foundation. And as many of you likely know, Pikes Hospice and Palliative Care is our community's only nonprofit hospice provider. We're now in our 42nd year of business, and we've touched literally hundreds of thousands of lives. We were the first hospice in our community. We still remain, there are 12 others now, but we remain to be the only nonprofit. And as Jim had mentioned, we're driven by the core belief that hospice care should be provided to everybody, regardless of ability to pay. And I'm very proud to share that in our 42-year history, we've never turned a patient away because of their inability to pay. There's information in your program book when you feel like you have time to read through it if you'd like to, about the history of our organization. And I encourage you to share it with others that you may know may need our services, or anyone experiencing their end-of-life journey or knows anyone who's experiencing an end-of-life journey. You guys are truly our best advocates, so thank you in advance. And there's also information in your program booklet about this sculpture, just behind me to my right. And we commissioned a local artist, Fred Darpino, to create this sculpture, as trees are a very important symbol in nearly every culture. And the concept of a tree of life has been used in science, religion, and philosophy. It symbolizes the interconnectedness of all life. Its branches reach to the sky, and its roots are deep in the earth. It's a link between earth and the heavens above, just like we are forever connected to our loved ones. So please, when you have time, after we're done with all the formal remarks, come and take a look at it up close. It truly is. We feel very special and privileged to have this beautiful piece of art. And really, this ceremony is meant to be a simple yet meaningful celebration of your loved one. Thank you for all of you who submitted stories. It really helps make this celebration really special and unique. Our chaplain, Steve, also will speak to these stories that you all share later in this program. And right now I'd like to introduce Phil Boland and Jolene Bell as they sing Stories to be Told. And if you'd like to follow along, the words can be found in your program book.
This morning I feel sad. Lunchtime I get mad. Dinner I feel glad. That seems crazy. Nighttime I'm just scared, and my thinking gets weird. If I'm sleeping all the time, is that too lazy? Everything is different now. I want it all back the same. I promised God a lot to make it all okay, but it hasn't done a bit of good. except sometimes in dreams. Looks like no one's gonna make it go away. Everything must die sometime. Just because that's true doesn't make things any easier if it's happening to you. But we're all in this together, so if you need a hand to hold, when you're feeling ready, there are stories to be told. First remembering is awful, and somehow it starts to help. I can even laugh the same time that I bore. I start to see that letting go has a lot to do with trust. It could be it's a lot like being born. Maybe bodies stay behind so that spirits can fly free. Places are made of light and play and friends, and the body feeds the earth so new lives can come and grow. And all along it's love that never ends. Everything must die sometime, but just because that's true doesn't make things any easier if it's happening to you. But we're all in this together, so if you need a hand to hold, and when you're feeling ready, there are stories. When you're feeling ready, there are stories. When you're feeling ready, there are stories to be told.
I'm Chaplain Steve. I don't think I've met everyone here. I've met a few of you, and it's always a pleasure. And Chaplain is about stories. I heard so many stories even today. Every day I hear stories. Heard a very sad story this morning. One of my patients, she's nearing the end of life with Parkinson's disease, and she lost a baby who drowned in a bucket in her kitchen, and she's processed that now toward the end of life. And that kind of broke my heart this morning. The next family had come, I hear how the couple met at a square dance. And that's been a joyful stories. Volunteers know that I trained them in storytelling. Storytelling is the power of knowledge. About 95% of the information we process is through story. Believe it or not, I had to learn 5 different languages to become a chaplain pastor. Ancient Greek has helped me a lot, I'll tell you that. So I can read Plato to somebody, but most of the way I can remember vocabulary is to put a story to each little word. Pretty soon I can memorize vocabulary real easily. There's power in story. This all started with me. I was making a presentation at a medical conference called Creativity and Madness in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And the man who was presenting before me was a Crow Indian who got his MD from Stanford, and he used storytelling as part of his process of helping families. And he had these neuroscans, which I usually find really boring, but the neuroscan showed what happens to the brain when we listen to stories. And it showed that our brains are more at rest listening to a story than any other activity, including sleep. And that's been followed up by Princeton University. They did a study in the laboratory there. The director was Uri Hassan, and I've been in contact with all of them. In fact, they sent me all their data, their findings. And they showed that we tell stories, we've got brainwaves going on. And those brainwaves get duplicated by those listening, even if it's recorded. If it's live or it's Memorex, it doesn't matter. Well, I thought if that's the case, I want to bring that into my work as a chaplain here. I've got people who have dementia and can't remember very well, so I started telling them stories. I got permission because can I experiment? Well, you're not going to hurt somebody telling them a story. And my favorite was right across the street, Cheyenne Mountain Care Center. There was a woman, one of my patients, she hadn't spoken for about 3 years, hardly anything. And I went on over there, and her daughter was there, and she was a Catholic, so I told a Christian story of the lost sheep. She actually got done, and she said, "Thank you very much," and her daughter went, "I just heard Mom." Something was calming in her mind and letting her organize, just listening to a story. The next week I came back with a new story about a caterpillar, because she always reminded me of a caterpillar. She's getting all changed, she's getting wrapped up all the time. Other people are tending to her, but one of these days she's going to fly. Well, she said, "Thank you very much," and she had a few more words, but that's kind of dumb. You've got to imagine you're either a sheep or a caterpillar. Why don't I just tell a story about a people? So I next week came and told her a story about a cowboy. A cowboy that he had been a member of my church when I was a pastor, and he had homesteaded, his parents homesteaded behind Pikes Peak. And he had so many stories. I'd go fishing with him. I never got the fish cleaned before I wrote the notes on the stories. They were such good stories. And he told me about how he lost a job as a teenager trying to impress a girl trying to ride a horse. That the boss said, "Don't you ever ride that horse or I'll fire you." And he did anyway. Well, she got done hearing that. She said, "Honey, do you remember when Grandpa used to hook up the wagon and we'd take a ride out on that ranch on Sunday afternoon?" And they started sharing. That lasted for about 20 minutes. Well, that power of stories is what we're about here too, because we are talking about remembering. Think of the word remember. It's got the prefix R-E. It's to do it again and again, right? But the other part is member. These are members of your family. They're members of our community. When you tell the story, you have the power to keep them as members. That's why we remember. And you got to tell these stories to your children and grandchildren. They got to tell these stories. That way we always become members and remember, and we are always members. So we're going to listen to a few of the stories here. The story of Frank Ballard, whose name is Rick. We're told it's a long story how he got that name. I'd love to hear it. My father used to call me Sarah, because I love Sara Lee cheesecake. That's a short story, but I'd love to hear how Rick got his name. He was a straight arrow and a compassionate heart. I love reading this. He loved his brothers and sisters, his sons, daughters. If you want to be remembered for anything, be remembered that you loved. Uncle Rick was an amusement park to his niece and nephews. I'd love to think of what that is. He was a faithful friend, a strong dad, and a wealth of information about do your own projects. And he embraced Nancy's family. He left too soon. We know he's smiling down on us, says Nancy. Claire Ellen McClellan, her family couldn't be here today, and we don't even have her photo, but I had the opportunity to be her chaplain. And I remember a few times coming into her room up at Skyline, and she'd be under her blanket, and you'd go, "Oh, she must be sleeping, let me sneak." She'd go, "Surprise!" That's what I remember. That's a good story too. And then Maxine Golightly Grossman. Maxine was a free-spirited artist. We got a lot of artists represented here. A mother, friend, and devoted wife. The love she had for her husband, 2 sons and their wives, and their 2 grandchildren will carry them forward in their lives without her. Again, to be remembered by the word love. Veda Hiltz, my mom was such an anchor of hope, joy, and encouragement in her family. Strong faith in Jesus gave her strength to push through those tough times and allowed her to celebrate every day. And says each one of us has sensed her presence at specific times of celebration and even in sadness. I get those phone calls quite often. Chaplain, I think my husband just showed up. He passed away a week ago. Am I going nuts? I said, no, you are blessed. So, I can tell you about my mom showing up 2 weeks before COVID and promising to protect me, but I won't. But she was a fabulous artist, painting murals on walls, on her fence in the backyard. She loved to paint and sketch on location in the mountains, one of those plein air artists, near lakes and even the seashore. And she could express her heart in God's creation through art. Uta Kresner, on this almost exactly 21st anniversary of her passing, we remember Mom, keep her as a member, one of the most positive influences in my life. Not only did she point my way to God, but she had an edginess that dispelled all the negative perceptions I had regarding that perspective as something even worth thinking about. And Gary writes, sadly, she would never see the day that I did come to the Lord. But to know she had such a healthy influence in that direction, I would only come to realize in the retrospect after she passed on. And he says, I remember her final days and how hospice nurses showed such an unwavering dedication and took such steadfast care for her condition, both mentally and physically. I'll never forget, and I'm eternally grateful for their patience and professionalism. Uta was born in Berlin, Germany, miraculously survived the Allied bombings and raids in World War II. And he said, I won't be here today. She left Germany, but she also loved the United States. And when she immigrated here, she got married and had 2 children. As someone from another country and another language, you could always hear it in her accent, or in funny expressions she used without realizing it, like, as a matter of fact. I will always remember her around little things like these, and even more so for the inspiration and direction she exampled to me as a strong woman living out the testimony of a well-balanced life. I thank the Lord first, my mother second, and my wife Sandy third for guiding me towards the wonderful path, and I'm blessed in this life. This is Gary. And both the husband and wife, Jim and Margot McClellan. Jim, they both provided a wonderful life for their family. Jim put service first, serving 38 years in the U.S. Army, and as a Department of Army civilian. He began his career as a military policeman in Germany in the 1950s, served in Vietnam, weapons expert in the assault helicopters. He had a passion for weapons, and he was a marksman, just missed making the Olympics. He was a 33rd degree Mason. That's pretty impressive. Supporting Shriner charities, well-read, sharp mind, expert in history and engineering. He earned a pilot's license in the 1970s, and he learned the complexities of computer software. He remained interested in current affairs, science discoveries until the onset of Lewy body dementia. He entered hospice in 2008, but he always put family first. He even said, family's more important than the promotions I could get. So, Margot was a pillar of the family, running the household and raising 2 daughters during his many deployments, whether in Iowa, Texas, Alabama, or over a quarter century in Germany. Margot always kept the house in perfect shape and the girls immersed in activities. Her proudest accomplishment was becoming a U.S. citizen. God, can't take that for granted, can we? Her passion was gardening, decorating, doing her yard. Likewise, her home always reflected the holiday or the season, and the daughters always had the trendiest fashions. Most importantly, she had a smile, was the life of a party, cherished by friends and family. Photos through the years never caught her without a smile. She was one of the last to leave the party. She entered the hospice in 2014. And Robert Roulier, my loved one, was joyful and a stabilizer, and he continues to be that. A big Jayhawks fan, and had a beautiful tenor voice. I was crazy about him. Fabulous father and husband, very non-judgmental, and a man is a gift. That's by Marcia Roulier, his wife. Shirley Rosemary Sutherland, daughter of Austin William and Velma Von Ingram. She was born in Charleston, Illinois, passed away 2016. Because of her father's health, her family moved to Colorado Springs. A lot of people did that. In 1929, when Shirley was 2 years old and spent the next 87 years of her life in Colorado Springs. Shirley attended Columbia Elementary School, North Junior High School, Colorado Springs High School, which is now Palmer, graduating with the class of 45. Member of the high school sorority, First United Methodist Church, and president of ETA alumni of the Order of Rainbow for Girls. Volunteer at Goodwill Silver and Such shop for many years. She was employed by the Exchange National Bank for many years before becoming a homeowner. Shirley enjoyed traveling and had visited all but 2 states, Montana and Alaska. She and her husband were partners in antique collecting. They had a business for 25 years. They liked to attend garage sales and auctions all over the country. Loved animals, especially dogs. And everyone who enjoyed spending time with her and listening to her stories about her life and her many, many adventures with her and her husband. Well, Shirley married her high school sweetheart, James Sutherland, and they celebrated their 69th anniversary. They would have in August. To this union, 3 children were born: Deborah, Jean, Michael, Kent, and Jeffrey Todd. Tell your stories. The power of story, that's how we process. When I go home tonight, my wife will say, "How'd it go?" And I'll tell her the story of how it went. All of the things we process. But let's hold them dear and remember, making them always a member of our hearts and keeping them there by remembering. Photographs and stories that go together. This time we read the names. We remember. We make them members. Francis Frank Billiard. Maxine Golightly Grossman. Claire Ellen Howerton. Huta Kressner. Jim McClellan. And Margot McClellan. Robert R. Roulier. Shirley Rosemary Sutherland. One of my favorite quotes is by Margaret Atwood, who says, "In the end, we all become stories." Beta Hiltz. Let's say that. I'm supposed to apologize. Beta Hiltz is too important to forget. Ever.
Every time I remember, you really are gone. All my feelings rush in like I lifeline that's made out of sound. I will hold on to love. I will release the pain. I will live well until the time we meet again. And as long and as loud or as soft as I need to, I just say it like a chant or a song. Then my balance comes back and my heart opens up, and I feel sure I can carry on. I will hold on to love. I will release the pain. I will live well until the time we meet again. Now the promise I made you is one that I'll keep, and this time heals with miles and with years. And this lifeline can stand as a tribute to you. When sweet memories grow stronger than tears, I will hold on to love. I will release the pain. I will live well until the time we meet again. I will hold on to love. I will release the pain. I still live well until the time we meet again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. And thank you all for being here and for allowing us to honor your loved one. They will live in our hearts forever. After I'm done speaking, please feel free to come over here to the table over here and pick up your keepsake and CD. We have a CD of Phil and Jolene. If you guys would like to order more, please feel free to do that as well. You can speak with one of us staff members and we can help you do that. You can do it for a small donation. They are also on iTunes if you guys would like to get their music that way. It's just a beautiful CD. When we weren't sure if you were going to be here, I looked it up and you're on iTunes. I downloaded you. So, yeah. And with your permission, I think we have all of your permissions to upload your loved one's photo and name on our virtual tribute wall, which can be viewed on our website. So feel free to visit it there after the ceremony. And please feel free to stay and enjoy some light refreshments. Please come look at the sculpture, enjoy one another. There's no rush to get out of here. So please stay a while. We're so grateful for you all, for your generous support. It really means a lot. It goes directly to help folks that don't have funds, that are perhaps uninsured or underinsured to cover these services. So thank you. It really means a lot. And please have a peaceful remainder of your evening. Thank you all.